Hey friends, Mike Shaner here. It's the Mike Shaner Show. So, the focus of today's show is jury nullification. It's the last stand of liberty. Today's January 31st, 2023. My name is Mike Shaner, of course. So, it's said that individuals have three boxes available to defend liberty: the ballot box, the jury box, and the cartridge box. Is it any wonder that all three are under constant assault? The ballot box, we understand. The jury box is underutilized, and the cartridge box is always under provocative scrutiny. For the purposes of this recording, we can ignore whatever disagreements we may have about the virtues or misvirtues of the ballot box, and we can assume the cartridge box is self-evident. So we'll focus on the last peaceful protection available to individuals against tyrannical governments: jury nullification. For those that aren't familiar, jury nullification, simply put, is when a jury judges the law that has been violated as opposed to the guilt or innocence of the accused by returning a verdict of not guilty despite the evidence. Some examples of jury nullification happened in the early 1800s when northern juries refused to acquit individuals accused of harboring slaves in violation of the fugitive slave laws. Many juries nullified prohibition by finding defendants accused of violating alcohol control laws innocent, despite obvious mounting evidence of their guilt of violating the ordinance. I use the term guilt hesitantly. So the point being, the jury decides the law is unjust. It doesn't matter if that law has been violated or not. They vote not guilty. You guys hear my cows out there? So, they hear me in the barn. They think I'm here getting here. They're getting some hay. So how does jury nullification work? Jury nullification is a fairly simple process. Jurors ask themselves, does this law deserve to exist? If the answer is no, then they simply vote not guilty, regardless of the evidence in the case. When enough juries refuse to help the state punish individuals for unjust crimes, the state will cease to enforce unjust laws. Could cities be safer if available resources were used to protect the person, property, and liberty of its citizens as opposed to harassing them in revenue-generating schemes? I think the answer is pretty evident. If cops are spread thin, spread all over the country, hiding behind signs, trying to get somebody that's not hurting anybody, as opposed to if they're out trying to prevent, investigate, and capture violent criminals, there's a big difference on that. So, is jury nullification legal? Well, the honest answer is, who cares? Like state henchmen, enforcers, prosecutors, and cops, they make a living off of shaking down Joe Public, so they'd like you to believe jury nullification is illegal. As of this recording, I am unaware of any law that expressly makes jury nullification illegal, but even if there were one, or one were to be written, it'd be toothless. It'd be impossible to prove, and it'd likely be nullified by a jury. Once a verdict of not guilty is delivered, it can't be overturned. So, does a jury have a legal right to nullify a law? But they certainly have the power. The government's not going to spend a lot of time fighting losing battles. So instead of trying to make an unenforceable law about jury nullification, they prefer just to pretend the concept doesn't exist. They'll never explain to a jury about the right of nullification. They'll expressly prohibit defense attorneys from using nullification as a tactical defense, and they'll arrest members of the public for trespassing on public property. That always burns. Arrest members of the public for trespassing on public property. That's arresting you for trespassing on your property. If they're caught passing out educational materials on the subject. And what's it's actually traditional. What is a common practice is, it's way too common, is municipalities will flagrantly violate the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution by simply refusing to offer a jury trials as an option to defendants. So basically, in many states, town or city councils will scheme up some kind of kangaroo court to prosecute, usually the poorest people, for so-called crimes that can result in a defendant serving up to but no more than 12 months in jail. So what happens is you have local governments, and that's when we always have to stay local, man. We always have to focus on what the local governments are doing, because that's where all tyranny begins. And if we're going to end tyranny, that's where it ends. It ends and begins at home. So what local governments do to violate the rights of their citizens, a lot of people don't understand that including the federal government, all governments are corporations. So if you're progressive and you hate me because I'm not a progressive, and we agree on the fact that big corporations shouldn't be able to rule our lives. What we disagree on is how they get those monopolies. But the government grants itself, the government is a corporation, and it grants itself a monopoly. We should be able to agree at least to fight this corporation. And if we can take the regulations out of others, monopolies won't exist, but that's a different topic for a different time. But this one monopoly, most monopolies, but this one we can fight together. We should be fighting the government together, because they are a corporation, and local governments are the shadiest kind of corporation. They all exist to make a profit, but the difference is the main service or product offered and the chief form of revenue, and often the sole form of revenue, like every mafia of all time, is the protection racket. They collect their dues in advance, taxation, with the promise of keeping the individual safe from other forms of plunder. So just like a mafia boss would come in and protect from the business owners, at least they kept it to business owners instead of every citizen. But just like the mafia boss would come in and collect the protection dues from business owners, the governments do the same thing. But governments take it one step further, man. They shake down the individuals. So over time, governments have learned to diversify. They've created multiple revenue streams, mainly fines imposed on individuals who haven't hurt anyone but have violated some arbitrary town ordinance or county ordinance. Most of the time, this will be things like traffic citations, parking tickets, public intoxication, minor drug possession, things like that, trespassing on public property, feeding cats, not paying your insurance, not paying your trash bill, things of that nature. And sometimes it goes way, way, way far, like that cat joke I just made, and what happened was 2 women were found guilty in Wetumpka, Alabama, by a municipal judge of feeding feral cats, and trapping them and taking them in and getting them neutered. They were told not to do this. God knows why. I guess the government doesn't want people to realize how unnecessary they really are. But they would trap these cats. They would take them in. They'd get them neutered. And they were warned to quit doing that, and so they refused to comply. They kept doing it, and then they were arrested for trespassing. A member of the public arrested for trespassing on public property for doing a public service, and a municipal judge found them guilty. In Valley, Alabama, the courts and cops recently decided the town needed to be protected against an elderly cancer patient who had forgotten to pay her trash bill. No shit. In fact, dozens of people have been arrested, convicted, and sentenced for not paying their trash bill in Valley over the decades. These sound like some obscure and extreme cases, and ludicrosity may be, like it may be extreme on the ludicrous end, but the end is sadly a daily occurrence. The victims of the state they're not afforded, these victims of the state, the town, they're not afforded the right to a jury trial either. In order for defendants in these municipalities to exercise their right to a jury trial, they have to spend at least one day, and sometimes many days spread out over weeks and months, postponed and delayed over months, up to even years, and plead their case before an unelected judge who was appointed by the town council to raise revenue for the city. This so-called judge, he's usually a practicing defense attorney in a neighboring town. He moonlights on a commission basis to find people brought before him guilty and impose a fine. That's his job. Like, his job is to collect revenue for the town, the city, the municipality. And it's collected under the threat of a jail sentence. On poor people brought before him, it's never, once the town judge finds these people guilty, which is exclusive. I mean, it's probably not 100%, but it's damn close to 100% of people that go before municipal judges who are found guilty. They'll finally be allowed to appeal to a higher court after they're found guilty, after posting a monetary appeal bond that most of them can't afford. then they'll be able to argue before a jury at a higher court. But let that sink in. Before they can ever face a jury of their peers, they have to relinquish their presumption of innocence. They can't go before a jury as an innocent person who is presumed innocent. They can only go as a guilty person who is looking to overturn that guilty verdict. That's If a well-educated individual with disposable income ever appears before these pirate courts, it's either because the affluent person was participating in an act so egregious that his guilt is beyond question, or it was an accident. The cops didn't know he was an affluent person. No, friends. These predators, they prey on the weak and the vulnerable, which is why when people argue that the justice system is racist, they miss the mark by a wide margin. The only color these people see are green. They target people who look as though they can't afford to hire an attorney or miss a day of work. The system is designed to feed on the fringes. They keep the fat happy and the middle blissfully unaware. If questionable circumstances arise, they coat it with the paint of racism, and then they watch everybody line up on opposing sides while the real villain, government, slyly escapes to persecute another victim on another day. That's the sad truth of it. So, how is this legal? Well, it isn't. It's a direct violation of the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Why hasn't anyone stopped it, though? Because most people don't know what happens. This has been the small-town justice system for all of my life. In Alabama here, in Wisconsin, in most small towns, and like in Birmingham, for instance, Birmingham's the biggest city in Alabama. It's not the case. You go to Birmingham court and it's presented more like a court, but the municipal level courts are everywhere. That's how they do business, and that's how they raise revenue. Governments make a living. At the higher courts, it's corrupt, and there's a whole different form of corruption we can get into which is why we need jury nullification. But on these small town, local, your town court, your town council, your town government, they are the mafia that imposes tyranny, and that's who your ire should be directly against. They'll terrorize. They make a living by victimizing the impoverished. They'll terrorize the trailer parks and the ghettos with indiscretion. The only way this system will change is when enough light is shined on it to make the pressure unbearable, or the weak become strong enough through education. We break this system by refusing to plead guilty of violating unjust laws, and by teaching others to do the same, by making it too time consuming and too expensive for municipalities to keep operating this way. Poor people are often blackmailed and extorted into taking plea deals with the promise of payment plans and the threat of a jail cell if they're unable to pay. So basically what they do is they go in and say, okay, you can plead guilty and your fine's going to be $1,000. You can pay $100 a month for 10 months. Or you can plead not guilty. Your fine's going to be $1,000. It's going to be payable today. If you can't pay that fine, you can serve 30 days in jail instead. If you don't have the money, what do you want to do? Start paying your $100 next month or go to jail right today? You got a family to feed. Laws change when societies force them to change. Societies change when the culture changes. Culture changes for the better when individuals become educated. We have to teach people to stop feeding governments by taking bad plea bargains. The next municipalities, we have to educate the individual to stop accepting plea bargains that net the municipalities fat cash. We have to educate suburbia on these awful practices and encourage people to try to get on juries instead of trying to avoid jury duty. And I know jury duty sucks, man. It does. But freedom doesn't, and that's one of the only ways we're going to be able to demand it peacefully. And that's a way that we could start doing it quickly. It's not something we have to wait for future generations to do. That's a difference we can make today. We can tell a man all day long, don't plead guilty. But when he's faced with a stack of bills he can't pay, weeks and weeks of having to take time off work, to return to one pointless court postponement after another, that ends with him possibly locked in a cage as his family gets evicted or goes hungry, what's he going to do? He's not going to listen to us. He's not going to owe long-term freedom. He's got a family to feed. He don't want to be locked in a cage. I mean, people are going to go where the least amount of pain is. So no one would or should listen to us in that circumstance. You have to self-preservation. However, if we start nullifying unjust crimes in the jury box, the word will spread. So if I tell you, hey, go in and plead not guilty, and you can't afford to do it and fight it, you're going to plead guilty. You're going to do it. But if you can afford, if I go in and I plead not guilty, I know the system. I've been through it. I can afford to. I can afford to take the time. I can take the days off work. I can do what I need to do. And if I demand my right, so I'll plead not guilty, I'll post my appeal bond, and then I'll go before the next court. And then if you serve on a jury and you find me not guilty for speeding or for having I don't have drugs, I don't smoke dope, but if I did, I don't care if you do, whatever, for having a drink in public, I still don't drink either, but whatever. I used to, and so when I used to drink, if I had more than 0.08 and walked down the street and got arrested, it went to a jury trial. You need to find me not guilty. If I don't pay my fucking income taxes, you need to find me not guilty. You need to serve on juries and find me not guilty. When the word spreads, when this happens, society hears it. And then the poor people, they say, oh, I can go to court, I can plead not guilty, I can go in front of a jury, and I'm going to win. And pretty soon, everyone will know to plead not guilty, and the system will die. If we want to end systemic prosecution of the poor, we have only one choice: serve on the jury and vote not guilty. If we want to defund the IRS, we have one choice. It's that same lonesome choice: sit on the juries and vote not guilty. Want to end the drug war, eliminate victimless crime laws, starve the state, force them to focus on their legitimate duties? Serve on juries and find them not guilty. Furthermore, share this article, share this video. You know how passionate you get about whatever the federal government's doing? You know how angry you get about omnibus bills, and how frustrated you get about don't say gay laws, or you can say gay laws, or how angry you get at Biden for this climate change agenda, or how much you hate Donald Trump for being illegitimate, or how much you, all that stuff, that's real far away, and it's like a bright shiny object that's meant to distract you, to keep you focused on that. The racism lines, they're distractions. They're meant to focus, to keep you divided, to keep you away from it. If you take all that energy and all that passion, and you share these videos, you share these articles, you talk to your friends, you talk to your neighbors, you talk to the people at the bar, you take that energy and you channel it here, you use it to get people to understand the evils of local government and the power of the jury box. Tell everybody, you serve on the jury, go to serve on the jury, and have everybody that you can anxious and eager to go serve on these juries. Then we'll be able to make change. Use all that passion to convince or annoy, to debate your friends, family, and strangers at the bar, to become active at home, and use the last peaceful stand of liberty. Liberty's sacred. It's sacred. A man like me, there's nothing more important than there's nothing I treasure more than my freedom. Some people value protection more than they value freedom. This is one we should all be able to agree on, because it's protection from tyranny. It is the last peaceful stand that liberty has to it. It's jury nullification. I hope you'll spread the word. I hope you'll comment on this so the algorithm will share the video. I hope you'll share the video and like it. Subscribe to the channel. My name is Mike Shaner. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Mike Shaner. Follow me on Twitter at CSA Wordsmith. YouTube is the Voluntarist Party of Mike Shaner. That's VOLUNTARYIST, Party of Mike Shaner. Follow me on TikTok at Mike Shaner. Follow the Facebook page Writing the Revolution. Join the revolution. Nullify unjust laws, victimless crime laws. Thanks, friends.